On a quiet Friday evening, in a small town just outside Seattle, the local café glowed with soft yellow light. The smell of freshly brewed coffee and cinnamon rolls drifted into the cool air, mingling with the faint sound of rain tapping against the windows. Inside, a group of office workers from a nearby company sat at a long table, laughing a little too loudly for the quiet hour. They were young, ambitious, full of restless energy. In the middle of their chatter, someone said, half-jokingly, "Hey, what if we set up a blind date for Clara with someone completely unexpected?" Clara Hart was the CEO of the company, smart, elegant, in her late 40s, and respected by everyone. She had built the company from a small startup to a thriving business. But what drew people to her wasn't just her success, it was her kindness. She always remembered birthdays, asked after people's families, and treated everyone, from senior managers to the cleaning staff, with the same warmth. Still, she had remained single, and her team often teased her about it, in good humor but with a touch of curiosity. So when the idea of a blind date came up, one of them, Evan, grinned mischievously. "What if we set her up with Bill, the janitor?" Everyone laughed. Bill Turner was in his late 50s, quiet and humble. He'd worked at the company for almost 15 years, keeping the building spotless. He rarely spoke unless spoken to, and he always wore the same faded blue jacket. To the young staff, he was invisible in that way some people become when they're part of the background. The joke was meant to stay a joke. But someone, in their youthful thoughtlessness, actually sent the invitation. A dinner reservation under both their names at the café by the river. And to everyone's surprise, both said yes. That Sunday evening, Clara arrived first. She wore a simple cream dress and a soft smile, carrying herself with quiet grace. She looked around the café, expecting perhaps some business acquaintance, maybe a setup her staff had arranged with good intentions. Then the door opened, and Bill walked in. His jacket was freshly pressed, and his shoes shined so bright they caught the light. He carried a small bouquet of daisies, slightly uneven, clearly picked with care. When Clara saw him, she didn't laugh. She didn't look surprised or uncomfortable. She simply stood, smiled warmly, and said, "Bill, what a lovely surprise." He looked nervous, holding the flowers out awkwardly. "I hope this isn't strange. I wasn't sure if you'd even want to sit down with me." "Of course I do," she said gently. "Please, have a seat." They talked. Slowly at first, as people do when they're finding their rhythm. Bill told her about his early years working in construction, about losing his wife to illness 10 years ago, about how he'd taken the janitor job just to keep busy, to stay around people. Clara listened, really listened, with her eyes kind and her hands resting softly around her coffee cup. She spoke of her own journey, how success often came with loneliness, how she missed the simplicity of the small town where she'd grown up, and how she admired people who lived with quiet dignity. As they spoke, time seemed to slow. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening under the streetlights. The café grew quieter, as though even the air around them didn't want to disturb the calm that had settled over their table. By the time they said goodbye, Bill looked lighter, almost younger. Clara thanked him for the evening and meant it. The next morning, when she walked into the office, whispers followed her. The staff waited, expecting her to laugh it off or be annoyed. Instead, she walked straight to Bill, who was mopping the hallway, and said in her calm, clear voice, "Bill, I was wondering if you'd join me for lunch today. I'd really like to continue our conversation." The hallway fell silent. Someone dropped a pen. But Clara just smiled at him, as though nothing about it was unusual at all. From that day forward, people began to see Bill differently. The same man they'd overlooked for years suddenly seemed to carry a quiet strength they hadn't noticed before. He wasn't just the janitor. He was a man with a story, with memories, with a kind heart that had touched the company's most respected person. Weeks passed. Clara and Bill became close friends, often seen sharing lunch or talking in the garden behind the office. There were no grand gestures, no sudden romance, just companionship, built on mutual respect and gentle conversation. One afternoon, Clara called a meeting. Everyone gathered in the conference room, expecting news about a new client or a big project. Instead, she began to speak softly, her voice steady. "I want to talk about something that matters more than our business," she said. "About how we see people." She looked around the room, letting the silence settle. "Some time ago," she continued, "someone set me up on a blind date. It was meant as a joke. But it turned into one of the most meaningful evenings I've had in years. That person reminded me that titles and positions mean nothing if we forget to treat people with kindness and dignity." Her voice trembled slightly, but she went on. "Every person here, no matter their role, carries a story, joys, losses, dreams. I hope we never forget that." When she finished, the room was quiet. Some people looked down, ashamed. Others wiped their eyes. Bill, standing near the back, nodded quietly, his hands clasped together. Later that evening, as everyone left for the day, Bill found a small note on his cart. It was written in Clara's neat handwriting. "Thank you for reminding me what kindness looks like when it's real." He folded the note carefully, tucked it into his pocket, and walked out into the cool evening air. The sun was setting over the parking lot, turning the sky a deep, gentle gold. He stood for a moment, breathing in the calm. Sometimes, he thought, life had a way of surprising you, not with big moments, but with quiet ones that healed something inside you. And somewhere in that soft twilight, two people, one who had built a company, and one who had quietly cared for it, walked the same path home, side by side. Not because of a joke, but because kindness had done what it always does, brought two hearts a little closer, and reminded everyone watching what it truly means to see another person.